you on the board. The number is 844-484-5737. That's 844-484-5737. And our next caller is Anonymous from Phoenix, Arizona. Hi, Anonymous. Welcome.
Arizona.
Hey, how you doing, Brother Steve? We spoke a lot of times before. I just have a question for you. I'm hoping that you can help me out on this biblically. I have a church that I go to here in Arizona, and I'm one of the part of the leadership there for a long time. And I kind of discovered that, our pastor in the church, he doesn't really involve us into like decisions as in when he picks people up for the prayer team, or when he picks people up for when he ordains them up for the youth center to teach the youth or to teach kids classes and stuff like that. He makes those decisions on his own, So I confront them and, tell him, hey, look, why don't you, let, the leadership for us all to have a vote on this, and he feels strongly that he doesn't need to. And it makes me feel like, well, what are we here for then?
Mm-hmm.
If we're not allowed to make decisions together as the book of Acts did, as they all made decisions together, why is it just a one man's decision versus all of it? So I'm kind of removing myself from the leadership and stepping down from there, and just to be a member of the church. I just want to know, is this something right for me to do biblically? Is this the right decision that I'm making? And just to let you go from there and let me know, am I acting foolishly into this matter, or am I acting right?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that you're acting foolishly. I don't think so, but I don't know if it's the right thing to do either. So I pause before stepping down unless you've already done so. Your pastor, obviously, I mean, I don't even know who he is, but everything you've told me lets me know that your pastor has an institutional, hierarchical view of church leadership. Now, he's not alone. Frankly, most pastors do. And I'm not going to blame them for should be able to read their Bible otherwise, but it's a cultural thing. In the United States, and frankly, before there was a United States, in the Protestant churches, and I'm going to say even when you go back to the Catholic times, and even when you go back before Roman Catholic times to the 2nd century with Ignatius and his writings, the church took on a hierarchical leadership structure, which is what all, of course, secular organizations do. And frankly, I think the more secular the churches are, the more they do this without question. Now, even the churches that want to serve God and read the Bible, they often read it through a grid that's based on their upbringing. Who hasn't lived in a church that has a pastor? Well, I'll say this, people in the 1st century were raised in churches that didn't have a pastor. But who since then, hasn't? It's almost like having a pastor who's like the CEO of a corporation, and maybe an eldership board that's maybe like a board of directors of an organization, is the way that churches are set up. In fact, they almost have to be if they're going to be tax-exempt organizations, because, and I know this because the Narrow Path is a tax-exempt organization. The Narrow Path is a 501c3, although the Narrow Path is not a church. But churches often are 501c3 organizations, mostly they are corporations. And that means to get tax-exempt status from the government, they have to do paperwork and fill out forms and stuff just like any corporation would. You got to have an executive director or CEO or something like that. You've got to have some kind of board of directors and that kind of thing. Which means that if the church is going to set up as a 501c3, they're going to have to set up like a corporation, because the government knows of no other kind of church than that. Now, God knows of other kinds of churches than that. Like in the 1st century, they didn't have that kind of thing going on. That developed after the apostles were dead, and not even in the 1st generation. But it has certainly become normal. Now, because of that, people who are raised in the church or trained to be pastors, there's a cultural expectation that they're going to be like the leader of a corporation. And depending on how, what shall we say, independently they want to run something, they will make decisions as they think a corporate leader should. Now, I believe that I believe this is a wrong way of looking at things. I'm trying to be generous toward the pastor because he's not really different than many others, and he probably knows no better. But Jesus said to his disciples, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles exercise authority over them.
Can you elaborate a little
But it shall not be so among you. He that would be chief among you, let him become the slave of all, the servant of all. So, in other words, Jesus said, yeah, earthly kings and corporations, they have this top-down authority kind of thing. They got a boss at the top, and they exercise authority over everybody else, because that's the way secular things are. But it can't be that way in the church, Jesus said. The people, there's not some top guy or guys that everybody has to obey. That's how the pagans do it. That's how secular organizations do it. The church is a family. Jesus told his disciples, the apostles, he said, don't call anyone father, don't let anyone call you teacher, and you're all just brothers. There's not this hierarchical thing. Now, it is true that in the different gifting that God has given to people, and Paul lists different gifts people have, some have a gift of leadership. That is, some are better than others at taking the lead, but taking the lead in the church is not supposed to be like, a Gentile CEO becoming the boss of everyone else. Taking the lead, according to Scripture, if you read the qualifications for elders and the exhortations that's given to them in the Bible, means be example. Set a lead for people to follow, not dictate to them how things are going to be. That's how the pagans do it. That's how the pagan organizations do it. Now, the person who's chief among you is the slave of all. He's the one who provides leadership as a gift, as a service. It's a serving. People need leadership. Sheep need shepherds. People who are young Christians need older Christians to guide them and help them grow. But that doesn't mean that those older Christians become their bosses and make all the decisions for the organization. And, I have a whole lecture series on this called Some Assembly Required at our website, thenarrowpath.com. You might want to listen to it. But the thing is, let's just say, given the fact that most churches are set up like that, and the pastor is seen as kind of the CEO kind of a guy, some people think that's an abomination and it should be stamped out. I think it's an imbalance. I think it's a misrepresentation of how Jesus set things up. I think God can still work through situations like that, and God has used many pastors in a good way. So I'm not just going to condemn the people in that situation. I will say that situation is not biblical, but there's people who don't know any different, and that's how they do things. But let's say a man is in an organization like a church, where he has that kind of power. He may try to be a servant of all, or he might try to be the big boss of all. If he's the big boss of all, then he's like Diotrephes in 3 John, who wanted to have the preeminence. And I can't speak to your pastor because I don't know. If he's appointing, Sunday school teachers and child care workers and, people to different positions in the church, he might be doing it because it makes him feel big and strong and powerful, and he's ordering people around. Or he might simply know that we need people in those positions. And, he's not going to bother you guys, the eldership, about it. He can just make some appointments and save you the time. I mean, he might feel that he's doing a church a service in doing that. But if you and the elders come to him and say, we'd like you to involve us in those decisions, and he says, no, I'm not going to, well, then he's the big boss man. He's the Diotrephes who wants to control everything. And that's not a good thing. Like I said, if you had not talked to him about it, if you had not confronted him on the situation, and if he simply was by default making appointments, without consulting anyone else, he might be figuring, well, that's my job. Someone's got to do it. It's not exactly a fun job, but I'll do it. Save someone else the trouble of doing that. He might feel like he's doing a good thing. And it may be that in God's eyes and his own, he is. But again, if the leaders say, hey, we'd like to be involved in this, he says, no, this is my business. This is my authority. Then he's on a power trip. That's just what it comes down to. And for you to step out of leadership is not necessarily a wrong thing to do, but it may not be the right thing. It depends on how much how much he's been confronted about the whole idea of involving the elders in the decision making, or the church itself. Again, elders in the Bible, there's no church that has a single pastor. It's all elderships. The church, Paul and Barnabas appointed elders in every city. Paul told Titus to appoint, elders in every city. And each city had one church. So, I mean, eldership is how the churches were, led in the biblical time, not by having a CEO type pastor. On the other hand, even the elders are not there just to be the boss. They're there to carry the load. There is a load of leadership. I mean, leadership is a responsibility and a heavy burden. Not everyone wants it. I don't. I wouldn't want to be an elder or a pastor if I could avoid it. I mean, if God made me, I would, but I don't want to. I mean, that's not something I envy. And by taking on that load, these men are serving the church. But if they interpret it as a power position rather than a service position, and that's the easiest thing for carnality to do in a person's thinking. Hey, I'm in power here. Then, of course, you're going to have a top-down hierarchical structure that's exactly the way Jesus said it should never be among you. So, maybe if you're on an eldership, and the pastor's doing stuff just on his own, and maybe making decisions a lot of people don't feel good about, I think there has to be a long talk, sat down with the elder to say, listen, like you said, what are we here for? Why are we even in this position? So that's what I would suggest there.
Thank you, my brother. Words of wisdom. God bless you and your family. Christ be with you. I love you. Thank you so much for the words.
All right. Thank you, brother. God bless. Bye now. Gary in Las Vegas, Nevada. Welcome to the Narrow Path.
Yes, hi, Steve. Hey, question about, let's see, reference say Luke 21:27 and Matthew 24:30, talking about Jesus coming on the clouds. I know there's Old Testament references to him coming as judgment on, say, Egypt or Edom. What are those references in the Old Testament? I couldn't find them, but I remember there was
Tend to come to mind right away would be Isaiah 19:1, where it says, the Lord rides on a swift cloud and he will come to Egypt. Psalm 103 talks about how God rides on the clouds as his chariots. Micah chapter 1, let me turn there so I can, rather than try to quote it.
okay.
Jonah, Micah. Okay, here we go. Yeah, exactly. In Micah chapter 1, it says in verse 3, for behold, the Lord is coming out of his place. He'll come down and tread on the high places of the earth. The mountains will melt under him, and so forth. It doesn't mention the clouds in this particular case, but the same imagery of God coming down. And it's referring to the Assyrians coming against Israel. So this is the imagery that is used in the prophets, that God comes, not personally in such cases, but that he's coming in the persons of agents that he sends, which is invading armies that will conquer them. It's a judgment from God, and therefore it's God coming. That's how they talk. And a number of places it mentions on clouds as well. And so when it says in Matthew 24 and elsewhere that Jesus will come on the clouds, it's possible. I mean, I'll say this: there is a place where it doesn't mean that, and that is in Daniel chapter 7, verses I think 11 and 12, maybe it's 12 and 13, where it says, "I saw one like the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, and he came to the Ancient of Days." Now, in this case, the coming of the Son of Man, our clouds, is upward. He ascended from the Mount of Olives, and he came to heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days. And it says that he was given a kingdom and glory and all that. In other words, he sat down at the right hand of God and was given all authority in heaven and earth to rule, which is where Christ is now. So, you have to take each passage in its proper context, because such images are not always used in only one way. It's not uncommon. Not uncommon for coming on the clouds to be a downward coming imagery of God coming in judgment on some earthly entity. But in that case, and maybe in some of the cases that Jesus mentions, because he talks about the Son of Man coming on the clouds, well, that's the very imagery of Daniel chapter 7. One like the Son of Man came on the clouds of heaven, and he came to the Ancient of Days. As he came to God, he came to heaven, and he was given the throne. So, there are, the study of the Bible is not a light thing. And, people who, they get one rule of interpretation or they get familiar with one figure of speech and they feel, okay, I can just understand everything where this is about. Sometimes that's true, but many times it's nuanced. I really believe every passage has to be taken in its own context. And of course, depending on the context, we can see, okay, is this talking about one way that this is used in some passages, or is it referring to the way the same thing is used in other passages? It shouldn't be too difficult to tell in most cases.
Okay. All right, well, very good. I appreciate it.
Okay, Gary, thanks for your call. God bless. Matthew in Citrus Heights, California. Welcome to the Narrow Path.
Wow, thanks for taking my call. Just a quick question. I don't listen a lot, but I've heard you say when people ask about hell, that there's like lake of fire that only the beast and the false prophet will go there. But like in that passage,
I never said that. No, that's not. The Bible says all whose name is not written in the book of life will be cast into the lake of fire. Verse 15, Revelation 20:15. So no, I wouldn't say that. What I have said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what I have said is that only in the case of the dragon and the beast and false prophet is it specified that they're tormented day and night forever and ever. Now, they are thrown into the lake of fire, so is everyone else who's lost. But only those three are, only with them does it mention that they are tormented day and night forever and ever.
Well, then in chapter 14, it says that everyone who worships the beast and receives the mark will be tormented forever.
Well, it doesn't say that. It says the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night who worship the beast or have taken the mark of his name or number. The smoke of their torment ascending is not quite the same phrase as they are tormented day and night. The smoke of their torment ascending is actually a citation from Isaiah in a passage, I think it's Isaiah 32, where it's about the destruction of Edom in that case. And we know that destruction of Edom didn't take place by them going to the lake of fire, at least not in the passage. It's not talking about that. It's using apocalyptic imagery, but with reference to that, or 34, I think it is, yeah. It's 34:10, I believe it is, yeah. We know that this is a prophecy about Edom because it actually says so in verse 5. My sword is bathed in heaven, indeed it shall come down on Edom, the people of my curse. And it goes on and talks about how it's a day of vengeance and so forth. And then verse 9 and 10, it says, its streams shall be turned into pitch and its dust into brimstone. Now you've got the fire and brimstone there. It's like burning pitch. It shall not be quenched day or night. Its smoke shall ascend forever and ever, from generation to generation. So this language of burning pitch, brimstone, not ceasing day or night, smoke ascending forever and ever. These are all images that are taken from. Now, I also point out that
sounds like I'm not getting good reception here, so I have to cut it out. Thank you for listening. Too much static, too much. Maybe another time. Thank you.
After it's burned down to ashes.